Hello, everyone. This is Greg Slozak, and I am doing my final module for EDL 852. Okay, so I'm going to summarize the case and establish the facts. So the location of the case study is in the Lightville Community School District. Lightville is a it's a rural district with approximately 60% of its constituents living on farms. They have two physical educational facilities, a K through 6, which is 22 years old, and a 7 to 12, which is 11 years old. Um, at the time when these buildings were made, there was a belief that they would last about 40 years with demographic trends, etc. Um, there has been in recent years an unanticipated migration to the community. So 26 years ago, at the time when they were planning to build these facilities, the population in the district was 758. Presently, the population is 1,200 and rising at a 2% rate per annum. So the school board and superintendent looked at three possible solutions to the facilities problem. One was to build an addition to the junior senior high school and move the sixth grade from the elementary facility to the junior senior high school facility. Second one, build additions to both existing schools. And the third, build a new middle school housing grades 6 to 8, thus removing the sixth grade from the elementary school and the seventh and eighth grades from the secondary school. So the decision was made to go with the third option. Essentially, the community was split between three factions. The third faction, consisting mostly of new arrivals with school-age children, won the day and were active in supporting the superintendent's decision. So the main character in all of this is Susan Potter, who was chosen to be the new middle school building principal. She is an outsider. She's not a rising internal candidate. She's from outside the community. She is tasked with starting up the building, which will open in 12 months. So she will be effectively on the ground a year before the start of the opening of the school. Her mandate for the year prior to opening the building is one, to make staffing decisions. This task included determining the size of the staff recruitment, and staff selection. From the reading, it basically said that first that this would probably be the easiest of all three of the large jobs that she'd need to do. Second was organize the school's programs. This task primarily included determining scope of curriculum, extracurricular programs, and instructional approaches. And then the third, collaborate with the architects and construction managers. This task primarily included attending progress meetings and involvement in equipment and furniture acquisitions. Okay, so an advisory committee was formed consisting of seven members and chaired by Helen Burke, who is a teacher in the district. She's the sister of a board member. The board was given the following guidelines in how they were meant to help. First, the committee would operate democratically. That is, each member would have a vote in making decisions. Consensus should be the preferred method for making decisions. Although each member had a vote, the ideal should be to make decisions that all found to be acceptable. The committee's first task would be to develop a vision statement providing parameters for planning, program scope, and implementation. The vision statement would reflect the collective values and beliefs of the committee members and hopefully of the community at large. All stakeholders would be given an opportunity to suggest elements of the vision and to react to elements proposed by others. So the conflict. The board chair, Helen Burke, has insisted in following a process of drafting philosophy and vision statements, which effectively make the principal the sole contributor. So effectively, what has happened is the Helen Burke and the vast majority of the board members have decided to make the process of drafting these documents based on the principle of expediency and not necessarily of thoroughness. So Susan has expressed that this process would be undemocratic and not in keeping with the committee's mandate, which is kind of a paradox because the committees actually voted to basically to dissolve their power in crafting these really important foundational statements. So in the end, a final vote was cast in favor of Helen's proposal, whereby Susan would be the sole author of these foundational documents, and then the advisory committee would review them. So Susan basically has 1 week to figure out her next steps. So reporting any legal or ethical issues, I believe there exists a breach of the committee's mandate. The committee, again, when we look back at what they've been mandated to do, it states they're supposed to be operating democratically. And although technically they are, because they voted to basically to dissolve the responsibility of crafting these documents in favor of the expertise of Susan. Fundamentally, what's happening, you have to ask some questions. With an outsider coming in who has, probably some profound technical knowledge, she certainly does not have a good understanding of institutional history and also the particulars of the local context of the constituents in which she's meant to be representing. So I would ask, when looking at this and looking at the committee's mandate, can the philosophy and vision statements truly reflect the aspirations and values of all stakeholders? And is this process in keeping with the concept of visionary leadership, i.e., has everyone technically been empowered? So I believe that there has been an intended or unintended perversion of the original mandate bestowed upon the advisory committee. I think it's important to kind of keep that as intended or unintended. Obviously, we don't have enough information to necessarily make a statement that anyone has technically gone around and tried to pervert the process. But something has happened whereby, the intention of the committee was that they would be helping Susan to craft these really, really important documents because of the fact that they are local in the community. They have community knowledge. They understand local context. Even though Susan certainly has profound technical knowledge and understanding of systems, the fact that she is an outsider and doesn't necessarily understand, again, historical context and local context, the fact that there's been a devolution of authority is deeply troubling. So again, when looking at the definition of visionary leadership, a visionary leader ensures the vision becomes reality by stating clear goals, outlining a strategic plan for achieving those goals, and equipping and empowering each member to take action on the plan at the organizational, team, and individual levels. And so I believe, that the superintendent mandated that the committee should reflect the values of the community. And again, I'm sure that Susan this hypothetical character is an expert and probably has profound technical knowledge, but she still is an outsider. And when taking a look at what a visionary leader is meant to be, it's not meant to be an autocrat. Even an autocrat who has a rubber stamped committee that's going along with what they're saying. That I think that's a bit of a perversion of the idea of visionary leadership. So again, the community is heterogeneous and its aspirations are not necessarily myopic, and so it would be very difficult to look at this process and necessarily state that it is in becoming with what you would consider a visionary leader or an ethical leader. And again, having one person craft these foundational documents is not in keeping with the definition of those things, and also may cause for the philosophy and vision of the school to be not in keeping with the aspirations of the community at large. So again, this could be damaging to the community because it potentially is potentially undemocratic, and it could start Susan's tenure off on the wrong foot by sowing distrust within unrepresented portions of the community. Again, we don't know necessarily whether or not this has been consciously done or unconsciously done, but what is certainly apparent is that the intention of why the committee was formed has been perverted to some extent. So again, all members of the community have a stake in the decision-making process. The building and the way in which the building is going to be run obviously is going to affect a large portion of the community at large. So again, it's still unknown the extent to which all members of the community are acting of their own free will and or understand the function that they're supposed to be serving. And so again, it could be that they are following a path of expediency without really fundamentally understanding the value of the input that they're needed to be doing in helping to get the values of the community into these foundational pieces. It may be prudent to discuss the issue individually with members of the community to ascertain the extent to which they fully understand these concerns. So there's a few options that Susan could follow. First and foremost, she could ask for some guidance from like a colleague and get an outside eye, or she could go directly to the superintendent to explain the situation and see what course of action he or she would recommend. Possibly could have private conversations with individual committee members to see if they fully understand the issue and their charge in being part of the group. You could set a new agenda for the following week with the intention of revisiting the issue, or you could just ignore the issue and continue on. Possible consequences of this: you run the risk of being seen as ineffectual and or indecisive in the eyes of peers, or the superintendent or the community at large. Also could be with some of these options, in particular, setting a new agenda, you could risk having the committee seeing you as you're probing and politicking as what you are trying to avoid, which is being undemocratic. And so I do think that with these particular options, like, you would really want to tread lightly and be very intentional and thoughtful before actually acting. So evaluating your options. Well, again, I think the worst thing that you could do is just to sit back and let this continue. There would need to be some action. I do think that probably the best thing to do would go directly to the superintendent. Generally speaking, you want to get that experience from someone who probably has gone through something like this previously. Going it alone, I think, would be probably not the best route to go through. And I think that being transparent in what you would want to do would avoid having some things like being seen as politicking or again kind of going around people. And so this is a very tricky scenario. So I think the best option, again, would be to go and talk directly with the superintendent and try to get his or her take on the best course of action to follow. I think keeping them informed and in the loop is really essential to not getting yourself into hot water. I think also, again, discussing with individual members of the committee or in small groups, and ascertaining the extent to which they want to kind of devolve their responsibility and try to get them to understand. Maybe they don't really have a good solid understanding of why mission and vision statements are fundamentally important. They may think that these things are just for accreditation's sake. I will say that every school that I've worked at internationally, the mission of the IBO and the mission of the school is really, really important in driving what we're doing in the written and taught curriculum. And so these types of things should never be undertaken solely by one or two people. There really needs to be community involvement and buy-in, and sometimes that takes a long time. Sometimes going through and making sure that you have the best interest and the perspective of everyone within the community. It might take some more time, it might not be efficient, but in the long run, it's probably going to be the best thing for the school. This is particularly important in an international setting because there is such an eclectic array of different cultures and perspectives. I can say, as being a member of visiting teams for accreditation, it's really apparent right off the bat if groups have been isolated or underrepresented. And when you are doing a self-study for accreditation for WASC or for the IB, it's always something that should be driving your decision making, and something that again should be inclusive in the way in which it's handled. So again, I would say that the best option here would again probably be to be transparent, to talk individually with people, and then try to set an agenda whereby we revisit this in a week's time. So again, I would say this is how I would imagine implementing the decision. Set a meeting with Helen first to be transparent about your intentions, so that way she doesn't feel as though you've gone behind her back. Meet with the superintendent to outline what has happened and be clear on the course of action. Meet individually or in pairs again with individual members to outline the ethical issues you see with disempowering them from the creative process. Set an agenda for the next meeting with the group and ask for time to discuss the nature and purpose of these foundational documents. Listen and respond to questions thoughtfully and with contemporary educational data, and then be prepared to have the superintendent get directly involved if, again, you get a negative outcome. So in summary, being an expert doesn't necessarily mean that a building leader has the proper understanding of local context. I've seen that on many occasions where a very well-qualified, intelligent person comes in and really doesn't understand, the local context of people in Korea or in Thailand or in the United Arab Emirates, and sometimes it's important for a building leader to actually not take action immediately, like to sit back and really gauge the understanding of the local context. I think that listening is a really important skill that a building leader needs to develop, and patience is something, again, that when looking at this particular case study, I see a lot of parallels to things I've experienced throughout my career as a mid-level leader. Again, visionary leadership isn't autocratic or should avoid needing to be. I think, again, expediency isn't always the best option. Mission and vision statements must reflect the views and aspirations of all members of the community. And being a leader sometimes means educating as well as leading and or decision making. And again, educating, not just meaning educating others, but educating yourself and getting all the information that you can to make informed ethical decisions. And with that, I am finished. Here are my references, and thank you very much for listening.